Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
All right, it's No Time to Die emergency podcast time, everybody. It's Hans Zimmer. It's just been announced today. What do you think about that, John Williams?
I'm excited. It's does this come as a surprise? That's what Hans Zimmer. I mean, he's such an icon. I mean, there's no greater film composer that's alive today than Hans Zimmer, right? I mean, his resume is ridiculous.
Very
obviously go. Yeah, he really is. I mean, said, let me see. I'm familiar with a lot of his work, but let me just check him out. Looked him up and saw his resume, and I was like, Jesus Christ, man, this guy has done a lot. I mean, the real question is, no time to deliver.
Hey,
he's got a month and a half, which is pretty outrageous. So
yeah,
they need him, right? I mean,
here's my thoughts on this, right? So we should explain. We've patched in JW on the phone while he's stepped out from work at the moment, because obviously it's an emergency podcast. So that's why JW sounds a bit telephony this week. But yeah, good on you, John, for stepping out of work. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So here's the thing, right? I've heard some rumblings that. Let me give you a perfect example, right? So James Patterson is a very, very well-known author, right? And he releases an ungodly amount of books every year. But James Patterson does not write all those books. It comes out under his name. Basically, what I'm given to understand he does is he'll come in, he'll have an outline for a story, right? And then he'll have like another dude who'll come in and basically color it all in and do the lion's share of the actual writing. And I've heard that's a little bit similar to what you get with Hans Zimmer, because he's got his sort of score factory, his soundtrack factory, remote control productions over there. And there's a lot of really talented composers on there. And I've heard that is a lot of the time what's going on over there. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard, that he'll come in, he'll maybe have like a few themes or a central kind of vibe that he creates himself. That is Hans Zimmer. And then one of his other dudes will come in and kind of like flesh out the rest of it. What do you think about that? Because he's very busy, man. Yeah. Like if you look at his schedule, what he's got coming up, it is a bit ridiculous. He's got SpongeBob, Sponge on the Run. He's got Space Jam 2. He's got Dune. He's got Top Gun Maverick, and he's got Wonder Woman 1984. And then, of course, he's also got No Time to Die now. So what do you think about that?
Well, and he's also on tour. If you look, he's got tour dates scheduled. I mean, this guy really is a rock star. I mean, for Christ's sake, he played Coachella, and that's something. Boy, there's a little story there, but for another time. So I think that he does collaborate, and I'm a huge fan of the last Blade Runner 2049 soundtrack, and he collaborated with Benjamin, and I cannot remember the last name in this moment. Thank you. And that soundtrack, for me, the original Blade Runner soundtrack of Vangelis is like the holy grail. Like I can't even listen to it during daylight hours. It has to be in the right, the mood. And when I saw that Hans Zimmer was going to do this, I went, oh, what is this going to be? But he really took those elements that were created by Vangelis and he ran with them and incorporated them. And it's beautiful. And I know on that particular soundtrack he collaborated. So I'm hoping we get something like that with Bond. I'm also hoping, because of the time constraint and because of the collaboration, I'm hoping that, this will lend itself to him leaning on John Barry. I hope we get some real classic Bond. We get a lot of the Bond theme, and then he incorporates, that beautiful blend of classical music, film score music with that dissonant electronic sound that he seems to incorporate on a lot of the soundtracks. So I'm hoping we do get something that does still shake things up.
Well, let me give you a little blast of his. No worries, man. Let me give you a little blast of his Wikipedia entry. So it's Hans Florian Zimmer, born 12th of September 1957, is a German film score composer and record producer. Zimmer's works are notable for integrating electronic music sounds with traditional orchestral arrangements. Now that's a bit of David Arnold flavor, isn't it? That's kind of what everyone was saying about him when he came on board back in Tomorrow Never Dies. I guess it all depends. Like, I can't imagine with somebody like Hans Zimmer, Like if the announcement had been Michael Giacchino, I'd have been like, yes, I know exactly what we're going to get from Michael Giacchino. It's going to be like, The Incredibles. It's going to be very John Barry. I don't know whether we're going to get that from Zimmer. You know what I mean? Like, for example, last summer when Mission Impossible Fallout came out, that was obviously Lorne Balfe who did that score. And I went deep on Mission Impossible for a while. And I was living in Prague at the time as well for a few weeks. So I was like deep in, that's where the first film takes place. So I was deep in Mission Impossible territory. We binge watched all the films, then went and watched Fallout when it came out. And then for a while there, I was running across the river, alongside the river in Prague every day with that Mission Impossible Fallout score in my ears. And I loved it. And it was like, the way he used that Mission Impossible theme tune was great in the sense that when that kicked in, it like puts the chills down your spine and away you go. And I think he used that very respectfully. But here's the difference, right? I don't think you can use that Mission Impossible score in the same way that you would use Bond, right? Because what happens, Ethan Hunt does something cool and you get ding, 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 and all of a sudden you get excited. But you don't want to see Ethan Hunt walking down the street with that going on in the background. I don't think that works in the same way that the Bond film does. I don't think you can overuse the Bond theme. I want it every 5 seconds. I want it all the time. I don't want it held back until, with the exception of Casino Royale, because that was used so masterfully. But like in every other Bond film, I want it all the time. And I don't think my gut feeling tells me we're not going to get much Bond theme from Zimmer. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with that, or are you on the other side?
Well, I agree with you in the sense that I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard for me to sort of project onto, like what is it going to sound like? You're right. We know exactly. Boy, wouldn't that be great? So I'm excited about, not knowing and the element of surprise. I think Fallout is one of the greatest scores of all time. I mean, that you're right. It is masterful and it's pushing into a new direction. So wouldn't that be great if those two collaborated on the score?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Go on. You had something to say there.
My only, my only concern is, and this is going to upset some people, but what the hell? I hope that it's whatever it is, it's a departure for anything that he did for Batman. I don't want it to sound anything at all like what he did for Batman. Not to take away from Batman and what he did for Batman, but I just want to make sure that there's a clear line between Bond and Batman.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I think so we should talk about concerns here. So you've talked about you don't want it to be like Batman, and when I think of Hans Zimmer, I think of very dark, very atmospheric. I think of soundscapes. I don't necessarily think of big orchestral stuff, right? That's not to say he's never done that, because you go back through his history and that he definitely has done that stuff before. But when you look at those things he's famous for in recent times, I would say it's more that sort of atmospheric soundscape kind of vibe. Yeah. So that worries me a little bit, because I don't really want that for Bond. I want traditional Bond. What I want is traditional orchestral Bond with a new flavor in it. I don't want something outrageous and crazy. I don't want something too different. I want it to be rooted in what we know. I want it rooted in tradition with a little nice new flavor to put a fresh spin on it. So have you got any concerns aside from the Batman thing? Any worries about this?
No, not at all. I mean, other than I just don't want it to be generic, or bland, but I don't think that's going to happen. I gotta imagine that Zimmer's a huge Barry fan, and this is an opportunity for him to, to pay tribute to and to incorporate all the things that Barry did. And I'm hoping he takes that on and runs with it. Listen, I got to be honest with you. I'm a little bummed that Romer's out. I was really looking forward to Dan Romer, per the episode that we did together. I was really curious to see what he was going to come up with. And it's interesting that people are saying that it was creative differences and too experimental. So this might be a good thing for you that he's out.
Yeah, well, that's
the road he decided to go down.
That's what I was about to say. So obviously we had a lot of silence there. We had our little mole, our little man on the inside. who sort of broke the story to us that Roma was gone, and I think that was the 1st of November, I think. And it's been over 2 months since any official word has come out. In the last week or so, there's been some rumblings and some smoke kind of and ideas kind of flowing that something was going to happen with Hans Zimmer. We heard that it wasn't Hans Zimmer, but one of his dudes at Remote Control. And then obviously it's come out today that it is Hans Zimmer. So whether that still could be true in the sense that, maybe there is a key side man alongside that. Officially it's Hans Zimmer, but there's a very key player as well that's going to come in and do a lot of the work as well, a collaboration, if you will. Given his schedule coming up, I feel like that's got to be what's happening really behind the scenes there, whether we hear about it or not. But yeah, so it was the 1st of November that we broke that news, and then we put it out, and it's always a bit scary when you do that, especially when nobody else is talking about it, because I did a little scan, nobody else was talking about Roma being out, and you put the news out and you just hope that it's true. And the person that told us about it gave some supporting evidence and some stuff that made me go, it wasn't just a random like, oh, have you heard this? It was like, here's how I know this is true, and here's some supporting evidence as well. Obviously I can't tell you what it is because the dude has to stay anonymous. And I thought, shit, that looks legit to me. So we put the news out, and then it was like silence for nearly 2 months. Nobody knew anything. People were following up with this, being like, have you heard anything? No. And we genuinely hadn't heard anything until about last week, when our mole got back in touch again and said that basically it was one of Hans Zimmer's dudes at Remote Control that was going to do it, and that Roma's score was rejected as being too out there. And then now, obviously, in the Variety story, they're saying that it's, it was too experimental. So, yeah, I think we might have dodged a bullet there, man. I mean, it could have been an Eric Serra 2, and it's, aside from a very small number of people, nobody wants an Eric Serra 2, do they?
I know a few of them. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I got to be honest with you. My knee-jerk reaction to all of this was, "Ooh, I'm dying to hear what Romer did."
Yeah.
More so than my enthusiasm for Hans Zimmer. I was going too experimental, Bond. Like, ooh, I want to get my hands on that. I'm wondering what that sounds like. I mean, maybe it's best that it wasn't, in the film. That might be a little more than the mass public could bear, but yeah. I'm dying to know what that sounds like.
Well, yeah, me too. And it's not like he was a bit of an unknown entity of Dan Roma, because he wasn't like he was a big name that everybody was super familiar with, like Hans Zimmer is. He was more of like a left field choice that came out of nowhere that we were like, all right, cool, let's go with it and see what he delivers. But like even some of the big boys, with the first Mission Impossible, I think it was Alan Silvestri who famously did Back to the Future. So big boy in that world. Yep. His score was rejected for Mission Impossible. So it was that he presented something and they rejected it. So it does happen to the best of them. It's not like, he's just an amateur or something, just simply because we're not that familiar with him. But yeah, man. And I feel like we should keep our ears out for anything he does in the near future, because I don't have the title off the top of my head, but apparently a lot of Silvestri's original Mission Impossible score went into another film, was recycled in another film that he did later. So we need to keep our ear to the ground of what Dan Roma does in the coming months. And see if we can detect any Bondisms, like some crazy out there experimental Bondisms, but to get a flavor of what that might have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, I was curious to see, the nature of Fukunaga's relationship and Romer's relationship, collaborating and working together. I thought that would have worked nicely,
Yeah.
But listen, again, Hans Zimmer is as big as it gets, and he's been brought in the 11th hour. And I know some people are worried about the time constraint, but I think some creative people do some of their best work when they don't have time.
Yeah.
So I'm very hopeful.
It's one of those things though, because that news did break to us back at the beginning of November. And who knows how long that had been before that news reached us at the beginning of November as well. It might have been longer. So at the end of the day, it's probably not that they've just gone and signed this dude today and then he's starting work today.
Yeah.
He's probably had a good couple of months where he's already been chipping away at the score and making stuff. And it's probably a lot further down the line than one might think. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. But like you say, it's that same thing is a lot of the time, some of the best stuff comes when you're up against some kind of challenge,
deadline.
So yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm just intrigued to see what he's going to do.
That's a good point, man. Yeah, it's a good point. Barbara and Hans probably had lunch, 2 months ago. And I have to say this now. I have to say this just because, I know this is going to get dated fast, but there was a little birdie in my ear minutes before all this went down. And, okay. Sure. Let's see what happens. There has still not been, I need to get the egg off my face because we recorded the Roma, released it 20 minutes later. We got word that he was out. That was a horrible thing. And it sucks because I really liked that episode. But it's not 100% confirmed by Eon yet. There has been no press release announcing this as fact, correct?
I'm on the computer right now, so let me double check.
I don't, unless something's happened, it's not been 100% confirmed by Eon, by MGM or Universal. There has not been a press release of any sort announcing this as fact. And the only reason why I bring this up, and I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade, is because, like I said, I've been wiping the egg off my face with the whole Romer episode, only to find out that he was, potentially out. So before we get all crazy, I would love to have an official announcement from Eon saying this is what is happening.
Yes, I've got the Variety piece right in front of me, and it basically says, hold on, let me read it. Fuck off. I don't want to accept the cookies. Bugger off. Hold on, I'm going to have to read. There we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. So Variety, No Time to Die. Hans Zimmer takes over as composer on Bond movie. Exclusive. Hans Zimmer is James Bond's new composer. Multiple sources tell Variety. Blah, 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 blah. Creative differences are said to have been the reason for Romer's dismissal last month by Eon Productions, the Broccoli family enterprise that has made all the Bond films, dating back to Dr. No in 1962. A spokesman for MGM Bond's studio had no comment on the matter. A spokesperson for Eon did not immediately return Variety's request for comment. So, no, but all the mainstream press are talking about it. So I feel like this is one of those things where, a lot of the time, you want some news out there, but you don't want to make an official announcement, so you leak it to somebody, and then you know what I mean. I feel like at this stage of the game, it's got to be in the bag for Zimmer.
Okay, all right. Just I wanted to confirm that little note in the off chance they turn around and it's somebody else.
Well, you never know, man. You never know. There is a little line here that says, "Where are we now?" Blah 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 blah. Speculation has been that Zimmer, who also has Wonder Woman 1984, Top Gun Maverick and Dune on his plate for 2020, may need to enlist help to finish on time, as the film is slated for an April 10th release and recording will likely need to be completed by mid-February. Reports so far without confirmation have suggested that the short time frame may necessitate the addition of past Zimmer collaborators such as Benjamin Wallfisch, who worked on Blade Runner 2049, or Lorne Balfe. So there you go. I feel like those were the two names that were floating around a lot that I saw on Twitter and various people. Lorne Balfe and Benjamin Wallfisch were two names that were floating around a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if those two, either both of them or one of them, is kind of heavily involved in this.
Yeah, if Lorne Balfe did it, I'd be so happy. And I know a lot of people that's going to piss him off because of the whole Mission Impossible comparison. They're jumping on that bandwagon. But again, I think Fallout, that score is ridiculously good, man. Yeah. I shake my head and go, wow, it's that good. Either way, we're winning. We've got great talent surrounding the Bond franchise, surrounding this particular film. So I think, everything is good. Now, we'll say this from a consumer standpoint, because Hans Zimmer is such a rock star, I have noticed that, whenever something comes out of his, there's box sets, there's vinyl, there's deluxe editions of a lot of his work. So I'm hoping that the producers, the record company, whoever, we get something special for this. We'll get some lavish 2-disc, expanded deluxe, something or other, as a result of it being a moneymaker in the name of Hans Zimmer. So that's kind of exciting for me.
Yeah, that will definitely be nice. I think overall, no matter, I put the yay or nay out on Twitter earlier today. I was like, okay, so there you go. Here it is. Is it Hans Zimmer? Yes or no? And overwhelmingly, it's a positive response from the JBR family. A couple of dissenting voices saying they're not happy, too dirgy, too, not memorable enough, right? And again, that's something we've talked about a lot, isn't it? Is like every superhero back in the day had a theme tune, didn't they? And that was a key part of that. And if you think of old school 60s Batman, you had and then you had Michael Keaton Batman, you had that memorable theme. Yeah, I don't think you got much in the way of a memorable theme from the Dark Knight trilogy. I don't know whether there's a piece that sticks out there, but I think what we do have with this one is we have the Bond theme already in the bag. So he has to use that at some point. So I feel like that's a nice little safety net if it does lean more towards that than elsewhere. I don't know. Let me put it to you, JW, right? Let me ask you 2 questions. What do you want from this, from Hans Zimmer? And then follow up to that is, what do you think we'll actually get?
I think what I want and what I'm going to get are going to be very similar. I think that like I said, I think he will, we're going to hear a lot of reference to John Barry. I really do believe that. I think for all the right reasons, he will do that. I don't think we're going to get some wild experimental score, especially if that's a note that's coming from the producers, from the guy who just got let go. Hans obviously knows this is something they weren't happy with. So I imagine as an artist, he is going to accommodate he or she who is writing the check. So I think we're going to get something very classic. I do hope that he incorporates some of what I heard in Dunkirk and in Blade Runner 2049. I like that atmospheric, dissonant, moody music. It's something that I connect to. I just don't want it to sound cookie cutter. And God, I know I'm going to get blamed for saying this. I just find the Batman music to be cookie cutter. It just sounds like just big. I'm not, James Bond is my superhero. And no disrespect to anyone who loves that whole universe, but it just doesn't cater to me. I just don't connect with it. And some of the superhero, music that just sounds like white noise to me. It's just coming at you 1,000 miles an hour and it's not memorable. And I just don't want that. I don't think we're going to get that. I think we're going to get something lush, beautiful, classic Barry, with a flavor of electronica. And I'm really excited about it. And I think that's what we're going to get. I'm hopeful, and I'm whatever they put out, I'm going to listen to nonstop. I can't wait to really, over the course of maybe 2 episodes, break down that new soundtrack that comes out. And that said, I got to be honest with you, for whatever reason, this past weekend, I just found myself listening over and over to the point where the person that was with me pointed it out, Spectre soundtrack. Oh. And I still, I'm a big Thomas Newman fan and what he did. And I like that moody, dark stuff. I think it lends itself to Daniel Craig. So when I think Hans Zimmer's music overall, and what Daniel Craig brings to the Bond franchise, I think that there's an opportunity for a great marriage between those 2 elements.
Beautiful.
So I'm excited. Yeah, I think so. I think it's good. What about you?
Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I don't want. I don't want the same thing as you. I don't want any sort of cookie cutter sort of moody music that just sits there for the sake of sounding like a film score. That's obviously not what I want. But that doesn't. That applies to any composer, not just this dude. What I'm hoping for is I'm hoping if he does indeed have a sidekick who's going to come in and do a lot of the work on this, I'm hoping it's Lorne Balfe, because that dude knows how to handle a spy score. He knows how to do that. So I feel like, yes, let's bring in Balfe boy. I'll be happy with that. And then whatever Hans Zimmer dishes up, I hope it's traditionally orchestral. I hope it does something fresh with it, without straying too far from the boundaries of what we want. I can't see it being that John Barry style-y, because I don't think, being a big name composer like he is, he's going to want to do more of his own thing than copy anybody. But then, same by the sounds of it, Dan Roma wanted to do something completely different. So I think, long story short, I don't think we just don't know what we're going to get at this stage of the game. I don't. Yeah. When you think of a Bond score, I think probably what will happen is he'll approach it in a similar way to Balfe approaching Fallout. That's what I think we'll get. Whether we do or not is another story, but we will find out just a few months away.
Especially if it's successful. Yeah. So that Fallout score was so successful. I mean, it really was. I mean, there's double vinyl, audiophile special editions of that coming out. There was obviously a critical, consumer response to that. I mean, it did very well, and so I'm hoping if that's the flavor of the moment and they go in that direction, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool stuff. All right, man. I suppose I better let you get back to work. It's an emergency podcast, obviously, so we've caught you on the back foot. You've stopped off for a quick one en route. I should let you get back to work, shouldn't I?
Absolutely. This is great. And two things. One, I want to hear what everyone has to say on JVR's Facebook. So I want to hear what I'm more fascinated by what the JVR family thinks of Hans Zimmer than what I think of Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, all of it. So I'm dying to hear. And also and I always preach this because I mean, a lot of people sort of just, ruled out Thomas Newman right out of the gate. Whatever we get, let's just all make a promise to ourselves to really dig into it. Not just whatever our knee-jerk reaction is, not stick with it, live with the soundtrack, let it wash over you, dig into it, and really invest in it no matter what happens.
That's what we've said a lot,
then
isn't
come
it?
to conclusions.
Some of the best music, the most long-lasting music, is the stuff that you don't immediately get, or maybe even you don't like on first listen, and then over time it develops into something amazing, and you develop that taste for it, and it becomes like an all-time classic. Hopefully, that's what we'll get, but who knows? But I think it's a good thing to approach anything new, especially when you love it so much like we do with Bond. Approach anything new with an open mind and be like, okay, I'm not sure I like this. If that's your first reaction, then rather than sticking the boot in, just let it wash over you a bit, like you say. Give it some time to settle and then become more familiar, and then make your judgment then. Give it a week or two, man. Yeah. That's my advice.
Yeah, I know. That's what makes me crazy when people didn't like Spectre. How many times did you see it? Once. Really?
Yeah.
Once? It's like, here's $18, man. Go see it again on me. Lastly, it has to be said, that they asked David Arnold, what his thoughts were, and he said he can't wait to see the film. Just another class act from a class guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it has to be pointed out that, I know he's the man, and that was a really cool comment he made. That he's loves the franchise, loves Bond, can't wait to see it. Loves the people who produced the films. I saw that little blurb from him in the article, and I thought, well, that's really cool. What a great guy.
What a dude.
So that's that, man. I can't wait to hear from everybody.
Yeah, that's it. Call to action. Go to Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think about Hans Zimmer. And we'll be interested to hear your thoughts. All right, J-Dubs, let you get back to work,
Excellent.
buddy. I will see you very soon, mate.
Yeah, man.
Take it easy.
Later.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.